All right, welcome to another edition of the Growth Podcast. Thank you so much for the support you've given the podcast so far. We continue to have more upbuilding conversations, and this week is no different. I'm talking to someone who has a very big story to tell, and I'm talking about the Corporate Affairs Manager from the Electoral Commission of Zambia, Patricia Luhanga. Welcome to the Growth Podcast.
Thank you for having me on the program today.
No, it's a pleasure to have you. How is this season doing?
This season is busy, extremely busy. And just like you asked me when I came here, people ask us, what do you even do after elections?
Yeah, because everybody thinks you guys are just, election period, ballot papers, and then after that, it's just easy. You can work from home, you can relax and whatnot.
I wish it was like that, because now I would have been on holiday. You were not going to even access me. But yeah, that's the season for you. We've got the post-election period. That's just after the election.
Yeah.
Then we also have the pre-election period where we are planning for the next election cycle and the actual election period. So there's quite a lot of work that's involved for us to be able to prepare accordingly for the coming election.
Interesting. My interest today, and obviously the interest of the general people watching, is your personal story. Some time back, someone told me, you must talk to Patricia. She has a very interesting story to share. And that's when I met you, I was like, let's share this story. And now we're here. Let's first start off with your life growing up. Give me a background to who Patricia Luhanga is.
I have a very interesting and amazing background. I think I'm blessed to have gone through whatever I've gone through, because that is what has made the Patricia of today. If I didn't have that opportunity, I wouldn't be sitting with you, because definitely it would have panned out to be something else. So I grew up in Northern Province, coming from a family of 4, the first 2 girls, the last 2 boys. I'm the second born. My mother was divorced really when I was very young, at the age of 6. My young brother was only 3 months old, divorced with dad. And so we were raised by a single parent and with a mother. So I jokingly tell people when they're talking about their fathers, I said, what does it even, feel like to have a father in a home? Simply because there was nothing of that sort growing up. But we grew up with a very strong woman, very strong character, a woman who valued education. She was a civil servant, and you and I know how much is the salary for a civil servant and how far can it go to ensure that, there is something on the table for the children, including the education. So you consider that perspective. And I say, I wish I knew what my mother was doing then, is what we call entrepreneurship today. So after divorcing dad, it became hard, because then you only have one source of income, her salary. And because she valued education, there's a lot of sacrifices that she made. She took us to very good schools, but I can assure you that in those good schools where we went, we were like the least privileged people. So when your friends are wearing shoes, what do you have? You've got tropicals, and you're like a laughingstock. So, but then she would tell us, look, you are in a place where there are privileged children. The fact that I can afford to pay your school fees, the only payment you can give me back and yourself is to always come out top of your class every time. And for me, that message, Swilanji, really stuck in my head. If you go back to my primary school days, into secondary school days, even in university, they will tell you it was rare that I would even get to number 5. So it was 1, 2. If I'm at the least position, that's number 3 in class. Because you see, you've got that thing that sits deep down your chest, and you're saying, I'm not privileged like others. I don't have shoes like them. I don't have clothes like them. So they are on top of their game in that area. So what is it that should make me be on top of my game? So for me, top of my game was in class. If I go in class and I have all the highest marks ever, then I'm happy, because then it was like, okay, this is where I'm getting my payback from. So be with your clothes, be with your food, I'll sort you out in class. So it was amazing. You go back home and, you have conversations, and mom is asking, so how was class today? So you tell them, apart from people laughing at me because my shoes are torn, but this is what I did. This is my exercise. So you are showing her the work that you had. And she's like, yes, this is how things, should go. So We saw her do entrepreneurship at that point. We never used to buy vegetables. She made sure we had land where we could grow our own vegetables. We never bought meal because we had to grow maize. She made sure that anything that can be grown easily, she never spent money on it. On top of that, she used to do a lot of knitting. Remember in the past where, you had pregnant women, and she was working in a hospital. So pregnant women will always give her orders to do showers, the baby jerseys, the baby dresses, and the like, and she would make extra money out of it. And that is the money that was supplementing literally everything else that we had. But what is even so interesting is the moments where we would go to fetch firewood. We used to enjoy this more, especially when it's time for masuku, because then if we go in the bush, then we'll have an opportunity to get masuku. But when you begin to look at the pain that was created out of, that kind of lifestyle, where at my age, definitely nobody should expect me to go into the bush to do this when other children are comfortable in their homes. But that is what I was doing. And because there was so much pain that was coming out of it, I said, for me, when I grow up, I will not go to this kind of life. Mine will be different. And if anything, I used to joke with her to say, if I have my own home, you move from your home and you come and join me, because all this that's happening around you must come to a stop. So that's the kind of mentality I grew up with. And that is the kind of mentality that has, given me the leeway to be where I am today. The determination that came at an early age, seeing life around you, and you realize, if I do not pay attention now, I'm done. So my mother died when I was in grade 11. And that time, it's a situation where you have the so-called breadwinner. She's gone. So who else picks up your education? I remember struggling through the last grade 12, when I was at Witkila Girls. So you can imagine that's your last year. You've got a final exam coming up and you lose your parent. One of my mother's friends taught us early the day of burial. After burial, she called us and said, you need to make up your mind. Either you continue crying for her or you pick up the pieces. But I also want to point you out to something. So whether you cry, you go and hit yourself, against the wall, the fact is she's not coming back. So what is it that you should do to push yourself all the time? The memories will always be there. You would say, oh, she's not here. But what is it that I can do in her absence that will keep me going, right? So getting into grade 12 was not the easiest for me, though I managed literally at the end of grade 12. I had a distinction, made it to the University of Zambia, but I couldn't go to University of Zambia for just one simple reason. There was nobody to pay for my school fees. Even if I got a bursary, for instance, 75%, I can guarantee you that there was no place where I was going to get the 25%. So what do? I sat back and I had to figure out what was going to happen. My elder sister was in college then, and the terminal benefits for my mother were not even enough to see all of us, into school. It was just enough for my elder sister to finish her teaching program where she was at Kasama Teachers College. So what happens to me before she starts working? And also, you should remember that I had 2 young brothers who were in primary school. So who pays for them? And I told my sister, I said, I'm going to figure myself out. And she said, how? I said, I've got a plan. I came here in Lusaka because then we were in Northern Province. I stayed with my sister in Kasama briefly, came here and stayed with my mother's elder sister. And you see how we have this notion of thinking, it's very easy to get a job, regardless of a space. So for me, my target was, okay, if I can even work in a shop, just start raising money in a shop. But if my experience was very different, you got to look for a job in a shop, there is a male manager or a shop owner. What are they asking from you as a lady? They're always asking to sleep with you as a favor for them to give you a job. The question you ask yourself is this why my mother was knitting? Is this why my mother was doing gardening? Is this why she was remaining with the 350 mils of cooking oil to send me to school to come and do this? Your conscience immediately kicks in and you say, nope, this is not a space for me. I would rather go and sit and wait until the right thing comes. So the easiest thing that happened to Ilanji for me was to go to a Maid center. And when I arrived, I remember the owner looked at me, and I don't know, just by looking at me, she said, are you sure you would like to work here? I said, why? I've come because I want a job. So she said, okay, let me have a look at your papers, because you look like somebody who's got educational papers. Where academic credentials I gave her. She looked at them and said, this is strange. So here's what we are going to do. Instead of you working as a maid in somebody's house, I want you to be helping me here at the training center. So you'll be helping me to take these maids through the training, and I'll give you the manuals you read, and you just literally be like my right-hand person. When I'm not around, you pick up. Regrettably, I didn't know she was actually planning to wind up her business in Zambia and go back to South Africa where she came from. So I only worked with her for 3 weeks. Going into the 4th week, she said, Patricia, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this to you, but I'm leaving. Where are you going? She says, I'm going back to South Africa. So are you sure this is what you want to do? And there wasn't even a possibility of continuing with the running of that business. I said, well, I came here initially to get a job as a maid. So I'll still go back to that. As long as I've got nothing to do, I still go back to what I said. And she said, okay, that's fine. And she secured a job for me. Okay. Now, one thing I should say, Ilanji, is growing up, we didn't have a maid in our home. We used to, clean the dishes ourselves, sweep the house ourselves. And I remember you would have moments where you're throwing tantrums and you're thinking, no, this is too much for me. And Mom would always tell us, I'm preparing you because you never know what the future holds for you. You should know how to cook. You should know how to wash. You should know how to clean the surrounding, the house where you sleep, and literally everything. So that preparation really helped me to literally fit into that arrangement. So when I walked into that house, I can assure you it was as easy as, this is something that I've already done. I cook, I clean, and I did my work diligently. But one thing that happened in that home was amazing. The owner of the house says, I'm not going to allow you to be getting your salary, but we'll open an account for you so that every month end we'll be depositing your salary there. All we'll be giving you is a deposit slip because you've told us you want to go to school. So if we begin to give you the money, what is going to happen? Oh, sis, okay. No, I bought myself lotion. No, I decided to buy myself, a piece of cloth and whatever. And they made it very easy for me because the daughter gave me some clothes. I was using their lotions, I was eating their food, and they made sure that that money was going straight into my account. At the end of the month, all I could see was a deposit slip. This is the deposit slip, your salary has gone, so put it properly in your file so you can be looking at the numbers as they're sitting in the bank with what we have done. I worked for them for 6 months, and then I didn't even know that the lady was literally looking for a job for me. So that time the government printing department was under Ministry of Works and Supply, and it had just restructured. They were looking for grade 12 school leavers. So she secretly got my certificate, photocopied it, did the application for me, and sent it to Public Service Management Division. The next thing, she comes with a letter and says, you need to get ready. In the next 4 days, you're going for a job interview. And I said, where? She said, no, I applied on your behalf because we want you to be in a space where you can make more money than you are doing here. You've shown a lot of diligence in the way you have executed yourself in this house. There is nowhere I can point to and say, I have a problem in this area. Literally everything is amazing, and you don't need to stay in this space. So you've given me a headache to say, what is it that I can do for you to be able to be in a good space? And I've been looking around for you. So straightforward into the interview, and for the first time I wore a suit, which was given to me by the daughter, and heels. They were not really like serious heels, and I looked very nice. I was like, I wish I can do more of this. I can buy myself so many suits. And she's like, not now. You can't be talking about suits now. When you settle down, and that will be after your tertiary education, you can buy as many suits as possible. I went for the job interview, and frankly speaking, I can't even remember what I was being asked there. I try to recall but the usual, tell us about yourself, And the only thing that I really remember talking about, do you have any work experience? I said, yes. Which work experience? And I referred to what was my current job there, and I said, I work as a domestic worker. And everyone on the panel was like, they sat up, because I don't think they expected to hear somebody openly talk about it that way. But for me, I think that was experience, and it was speaking to the fact that this is what's on the table, and I've done it so well that even if you give me any job now, I'll be able to do it. After a week, I got a letter that I'd been given a job as a machine operator in government printing department. And so that is where I would say my career took off. Everything, as they say, is history. There's quite a lot that has happened in between, that period and where we are today. But if you ask me, like literally, where did you start from? That is me, and that is my story.
Wow. Are you still in touch with the family?
Absolutely. I'm in touch. Regrettably, the mother died. The daughter has relocated to South Africa. But whenever I'm in Johannesburg, I touch base with them. I'm always at their place. I eat in Shima from there. And so it's just like we've become family with them.
How were you affected by your parents' divorce mentally? Because most children that come from divided households, they really struggle, to get by. And you find some people, I know people who were very academically gifted, but then you find as a result of that, they just lose it. How did you keep yourself together?
So I think two things for me. The divorce happened when I was very young. I think at the age of 6, I was just trying to sort of, getting to figure out, so what becomes of me? I was doing my first grade then. But above all, I think Mom was an amazing woman. She never spoke ill of Dad, not even a single day. And she used to tell us, family is good, marriage is good. Whatever has happened to me as your mother will not happen to you as my children. And so don't start looking at your lives in this light. But let me also mention to you that the moment they divorced, Dad never looked back. He never came back. And the only thing we heard was, oh no, he died, You don't even know what happened. But we had a strong mother who really made sure that within her means, we were comfortable. And she was supported in that area by her elder brother, who's our uncle. He's still very alive. He's in Chinsali. And we used to love to go for holidays at his place. But another thing that we hated so much was because there was a lot of farming going on. So every morning,
there's a lot of work.
You're supposed to wake up and go into the fields. And we didn't really like that. But where we needed that kind of support, and when I say that kind of support, it was also rare because they were not staying in the same locality. My mother was literally in the middle of the town, Chinsali. The older brother was far off, over maybe 150 kilometers from where we were. And remember, the transport system in the past wasn't the way it is today. So for you to even access those places, you may be at the station for 2-3 days before you see the next vehicle come. So for us, the only time we started talking about the divorce was, I think, when I was doing my 9th grade. That's when I became inquisitive to ask questions like, so what really happened? And this is why I'm saying she never, not even a single day, said anything against my father. But I came to understand later on to say Dad made a decision to leave us because he found another woman who obviously he decided to settle with. But then it wasn't that there was any issue between them and my mom. It was just a decision he made out of, nowhere. And my mother never fought it. And it just ended there. So the support system for us was, first of all, Mom herself, her older brother. And we were also brought up in a very strong Christian background, where literally on Sunday, you have to be in church. So Sunday school, you've got to go for your girls' brigade then, because I used to go for girls' brigade. And that is what grounded us. And she kept us very busy. School, I remember I started reading biology books when I was in grade 5. And that is how interesting our home was. We had a beautiful library. We had all sorts of books, storybooks. It had the real life books. It had educational books. She invested so much in that. And we had a timetable. So if I knock off from school, I'll have to do the cleaning around. I eat and relax for a little bit. Around, 16, 17, I need to pick up a book. I read a book and I should be able to report back to her in the evening what I was reading. So for us, we didn't really see it that way. The gap wasn't really there because I think we were kept so busy that we didn't have a lot of questions to ask until when we got to a stage where we were grown up and we could see that this is what is happening around us, and we started asking those questions. But she also made sure that she guided us accordingly, that we shouldn't have an impression of, okay, maybe because this is what has happened, then we cannot make it. Or maybe because dad is not here, that's why I'm eating vegetables. She says, this is what you have for now. You've got to make do with what you have. But if and when I have money, I'll be able to provide for you in that manner. So it was acceptance that came early for us, that this is what it means. And whether we like it or not, whether we throw tantrums, we jump all over and say, the truth of the matter is dad will never come back in this house and we'll never again go to see him. So basically that was it for us.
All right. So now you get the government printer's job. How then does that connect to your education? Do you quit the job and go to school, or you were doing part-time school and then working as well?
So here is what happened. And, I laugh. Initially, I wanted to do law. This, journalism, mass communication issue just kicked in at a later stage because I think my mother believed in me in that area of, journalism, mass communication than I did myself. But I would tell you that she didn't dictate anything. I loved to read, and I still love reading. And one day I was reading a newsletter that she used to receive. So these health newsletters, and I'm reading out loudly to her. And I said, even if I want to become a lawyer, but I think I can read news. So they laughed with my elder sister because they had been talking about it. I didn't know, but they also didn't want to make me, they didn't want it to look like it's coming from them. So let her realize on her own, if this is the direction she wants to take, she'll take it. So when we talked about it as family like that, then my mind was set. In secondary school, I was in debate clubs, I was in Jets Club, I was in press club, because then the direction for me was set. So when I started working for government printing department, my focus is, okay, let me do a course in that line. So that time I remember even Horn College was not offering any diploma at that point on part-time basis, because that was the easiest for me to do. Work, cross over the other side and, continue with school. But it didn't happen. They only had a part-time course in printing itself. So that, like the printing press, where I was in government printing department. And I didn't like that. But I can also tell you that when I went into government printing department, I went to the hardest section of printing, which was the camera section. Everyone was running away from it. But I said, okay, why is everyone running away from this section? No, it's not easy, because if you mess up the film, then you are not going to take that for plate making for you to be able to print something. I said, give me that space. Let me try. So I moved from a section where our role was just to bind, whatever was being printed. And I went into camera section, and I had this amazing leader, Mr. Chilekwa, who said, your friends are running away. The fact that you have given yourself that you want to give it a try, I believe something is going to be done from here. They guided me through the process. Within 2 weeks, I was literally the best person to sit in camera, take my films, develop them, make sure that I nicely, put the ink on them if there were any things that were showing that would have an impact on the way the paper would come out, and I'm done. So they asked me, but why don't you want to go and do printing? I said, no, this is not me. I think I was born to talk, not to print things. So time passed at government printing department, and remember, I'm still raising money for my school fees. So until I reached a stage when I had gathered a bit and I went into school and I quit. So only when I got comfortable, and when I say I got comfortable, I paid all my school fees in advance and I quit. Because then I can just be going into school, go and eat in shima at home, go back to school the following day, just like that until I was done. So after I actually went into international relations, so I'm full of experiments. That is the problem I have. So international relations study, but you also see that it's still going in the same direction of if I have to be, for me, communication has been, if I can do international communication. So if I have to do international communication, what do I need to know? I learned early in life that institutions that, such as the BBC, CNN and all, have got specializations. Yeah. If I have to report as a diplomatic reporter from the UN, what have I studied? I need to know what international relations is all about. So for me, that direction was already set. I later on then went to do mass communication. I did mass communication. I said, okay, now I'm done. This is what I want. But then, interestingly, at master's level, I specialized in financial journalism. So my journey, after I finished my international relations, I worked in radio, at Radio Mano in Kasama for a year, and I was running the newsroom because I already had the experience that I needed in terms of whether it's print media, and I made sure I had friends in broadcasting. So I used to provide inserts for Kundamando. At ZNBC. When she's doing her women's magazine, she'll even ask me in advance, can you make sure that you provide 3 inserts in advance for my program? So I was getting familiar to the background. I bought myself textbooks, so we lunch, on basic reporting, broadcasting, and I was just adding on to the knowledge that I had. So going into Radio Mano was very easy for me to fit in with the international relations that I had, plus the basic broadcasting knowledge that I had. So I worked for a year, and apparently Chambeshu Water and Storage Company was also looking for a public relations officer for the first time in that institution because they were in trouble. They had issues to do with customer service, dissatisfaction, and they needed a bridge. And because I was in radio and I used to put them in a fix, they said, that same one who likes asking tough questions.
Let's buy her.
Let her come here and be on the other side.
Yeah.
So when they asked me if I was interested in the role, I said, I've never even thought about it. If you promise that you'll hold my hand, then definitely I would like to come through. But I will tell you that from this component, all I know is media relations. But I'll ensure that I study, I'll ask a lot of questions so that I understand what is it that I have to do. I went in and I had an amazing CEO, Mr. Jerry, who at some point used to tell me, when you go into meetings to represent me, just tell them you're junior MD, so that they begin to respect you and the like. I was 24 years when I went into public relations practice. And people were asking questions. Why have you brought a child in this role? What are they going to do? Because the trend then was it was only meant for like elderly people. You know, and then you bring this child in such an environment and industry which was tense at that point. But all I can tell you is we worked so hard to do our stakeholder engagements. We had stakeholder buy-in. Even when we say we do not have water supply today because we have a problem, people will understand it from the communication point of view than the lack of water point of view. Or they'll say, oh no, they've already communicated. But Patricia Bachelanda at Stwachwom for radio, that they will not have water because there's a problem this side. So it's that kind of buy-in that we got from our stakeholders that now meant we were getting to a certain level. How I switched again from Chambeshu Water and Storage was the MD for Mulonga Water and Storage Company came to visit. And I was assigned with the technical manager to take him around, right? So we get to the water treatment plant, and water supply is a technical field. So I'm explaining things to him, and I can assure you, I can just look at a pipe and this is 4-inch, this is 8-inch. Yeah. And I was explaining all those processes to him, and he asked me a question, said, are you an engineer by profession? I said, nope, I'm far from that. But how do you know these things? I said, out of interest, I ensure that I ask the people around to teach me, what are these things? What do they even mean? Because if I have to communicate, how do I communicate if I don't know? I don't know what is going on. So then he jokingly said, oh, I don't think you need to be in this space. You need to move to Mulonga Water. And we laughed about it. Barely a month, they advertised for the role of public relations manager in Mulonga Water. And I applied. I went for the job interview. I was the least qualified then. I had not yet gotten my mass communication degree. So apparently I was the best. But then the qualifications betrayed me. What do we do? Let's ask her, can she come in as a public relations officer and work under someone who's a public relations manager? Though she applied to come as PR manager. My sister said, this is an opportunity you have to go and learn under someone. You started alone. Yeah. It wouldn't hurt to go and learn under someone who's more experienced. And that is how I made up my mind to leave Chambeshu Water, went into Mulonga Water, worked for a year and some months with my boss. My boss left. And for that particular period of time, 7 years, I worked alone, literally managing the PR department in Mulonga Water. In essence, my boss came back and said, so you think the role of manager is by title? It's not by title. It's just virtually what you do here. Even with your position as officer, you've held fort of this institution, of this department, and you've delivered. And that's the time I left and joined the banking sector. Worked for FNB briefly for 8 months, left, went to the UK. When I got the Chevening Scholarship to go and study my master's in financial journalism, came back, went to NATSEV, and at NATSEV I worked with an amazing woman, Mukwande Chibesakonda, who's the current CEO for Zanaco. And I laugh because I tell people, if there's a person who's taught me how to run, it's Mukwande. So for Mukwande, it would be 17 hours when all of you are tired and you're just looking like, we want to knock off. And Mukwande is looking like she's just coming in the office at 8 hours. That's the kind of energy she has. And it had so much spillover effects on me. And we didn't even realize by default she became my mentor. Literally on a daily basis, there was something new she would speak into my life. There's something new that I'm learning. And she now started throwing me right in the deep end where she has to go and speak high profile meetings. She says my head of public relations will come and represent me. And I remember the first time I told her, I said, boss, you can't do this to me. It's like you're throwing me under the bus. She looked at me, she said, I'm not throwing you under the bus. You haven't just realized who you are because you always want to work in the background. This is time to get to the front. You can't just be pushing others to the front and remain in the background. So I want something to happen. I remember delivering that speech at Intercontinental Hotel. It was funny because first of all, when she said she's not coming and my head of PR will represent me, people said, maybe she shouldn't even just deliver the speech. They look at you and they're like, what can she even do? What can she even say? But somebody said, no, but we invited her boss and the boss has delegated. So I finished speaking. There was a standing ovation. And because, when I write a speech for my boss, I'm the one who's written and I've internalized it. Yeah. So I can just as well speak without it because I know what is content there. And they started sending her messages to say, oh my goodness, we didn't know this girl can, deliver the way she's delivered. When I went back to the office, Mukwande just said, this is it going forward, madam. This is this is your space. I can now rest. I learned something from her. You reach a stage where, as a leader, you go to the back. Allow the people that are coming after you to lead and be where you want them to be. But it also depends on the individual because that is the kind of leadership where she believes in growing others. So it was easy for her to let go and say, hey, take the front seat, take the front row. I'll sit back here and watch you. And I had speaking engagements. For instance, when I was speaking at the Bloomberg Media Initiative Africa breakfast meeting, she says, I'm coming to support you. And people were shocked. 7:30 she was at Intercontinental Hotel and like, you've come? She says, yes, I've come to support my girl. She sat in the audience to listen to me. And when I was done, we went back to the office and she says, well done. Things that other people don't experience, Soilanji. I had a boss who would literally sit in to listen to me and give me feedback at the end of the day and say, this is how you did this. You also need to just slightly improve in this area. I noticed there you looked like you were not sure how you handle this, is this, and they're taking you through the process. And so going into Electoral Commission of Zambia is something I said that was total madness on my part because of the timing, first of all. I joined the commission just before 2021 general election, December 2020.
Yeah.
I'm in Electoral Commission of Zambia. But that was after a tedious interview process. And I remember the first thing people said when I was appointed was, from banking to governance, what does she know? Can she even handle this role? Again, oh, she's a woman and she's young. That role is not for people like her. No, she looks calm. She can't handle politicians.
I thought that. I thought that. Yeah. I won't lie, I thought that.
But you have to change the ballgame.
Yeah.
It's not about quarreling with people. It's about engaging. It's about conversations. It's about bringing respect to an institution. Don't expect me to go and fight. I don't even know how to fight.
Political parties at Mulungushi.
Absolutely. So, and I had now to refine my thinking, be in tune with the environment that I was getting into. I remember my sister asking me a question, are you sure this is what you want to do? I said, let me try. If I fail, I'll come out. I would not want a situation where I say, oh, I wish I tried, but everyone was scared for me. I was the only person who wasn't scared for myself. And because I knew what people were looking for, and that was failure, I said, okay, let's see how this pans out to be. And remember, it's not the first time I was dealing with politicians. The water sector has got a lot of politicians dealing with you there. The councillors, and that is the grassroots, not the things that you see. This is when you look at whatever happens around here, it's nothing. Go to the grassroots and the person goes to the councillor and says, councillor, we've had no water for 1 week here. And go and confront a councillor. Then you know what it means to deal with a politician. So for me, it wasn't anything strange, but it was just changing now, literally going into the deep of things, the real things where you deal with politicians. And 2021 happened. We are here. We survived.
You seem to have, okay, let me not quite luck, but you seem to have had a lot of luck with having good bosses. Like, because for other people, it's a nightmare. Some people are not lucky enough, or I don't know, to just have someone who looks out for them. Most people have got a bad boss. Stress comes from the bosses. But from what you mentioned, from Mukwandi at NatSave, your boss at Chambeshi, Mulonga,
Chambeshi Water.
Exactly,
but I'll also tell you, Soilanji, that, and that's the problem we have, because we always want to talk about the good things, and people think, oh, she's had it easy. I had moments where I didn't want to wake up and go to work. I won't mention the place, obviously, because I want to respect the people there and the person who was there at that time. My maid used to come in my bedroom every day to encourage me to wake up and go to work. And she says, just be strong. Go and take a bath. Go and work. The environment was stressful. And I remember her telling to my face that I was worthless. Whatever I was putting on the table was useless. This is not the PR that we know. This is not the communication we know. And it was a female boss, right? I never had a female boss before. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe this is what people say about female bosses, that we can't even get along as, instead of her holding my hand. I didn't last. So Elijah, what was going on in that particular week is I said, I'm resigning at the end of this week. She was also planning to fire me. So before I could push in my resignation, I received my letter of termination of contract. I didn't know whether I should cry. I didn't know whether I should laugh. But when I told my sister, she said, you've been saying that place is not for you. it's a blessing in disguise. Just leave. But if you ask me, were the terms under which my contract was terminated fair? Not at all. I had people who even said, well, we're going to look for lawyers who can present you pro bono in court and they must pay. I remember my family sitting and said, you're too young. You don't want to go this direction. You know what will happen? You're in the communication circle. If this goes to court, your colleagues in the media will pick it and they'll write about it. You know the name that will remain about you? Oh, that's the girl who sues her employers. So leave it here. So if you ask me, I think I prayed after that. I said, God, never again in my life should you give me a boss, regardless of who they are, who's got a heart like that. And never should I also treat anyone that way, because I've felt the way it feels. Let me be the last person to even ever think I should make life difficult for someone. If someone wants to make life difficult for them in the workplace, let them do it on their own, but not that it's me who's doing it for them. And so I've had a fair share of having actually two bosses like that. But overall, I've had amazing relationships with my bosses. Some of them have been like fathers to me because, like I said, I went in the workplace when I was very young, and I've gone in with a mind to learn, open-minded, but I also speak my mind. I remember one of my bosses was very uncomfortable with the fact that I can just call it the way it is. And at some point he was thinking, no, I think she's being insolent. Somebody said, no. You need a person like that when everybody's saying, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. You need a person who will say, hold on, this is not the way it should be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you go in the ditch with the yes, sirs and yes, sirs. But he also learned and, told me, this is your strength. Initially, I thought it's a problem, but it's your strength because you speak it as it is. If people are not happy with you, they're not just happy because you're speaking the truth. So carry on with that kind of arrangement. So yes, it's been a balance of both.
For many people, the kind of life that you lived in the beginning, in your tender years, for many people, they would never have seen a life beyond your circumstances. For many people, that then affects their education. They don't put in as much because they're thinking, a long time ago, I don't know if you watch in movies or in other African countries where they come and tell you whose child are you. So depending on whose child you are, where you come from, you are treated a certain way. And so that kind of like sets you up for success because of your father and the family and whatnot. But you never had that. You've gone through all of this and now you find yourself here. What would you say to people who maybe they haven't seen their light yet and they're going through those kinds of challenges that you were going through? Others right now are still dealing with maybe one of those bosses that was very toxic for you.
So this is, I usually say, when you look at me, you're looking at the real thing of what you've gone through. So you can get through it and you can be where I am. I'll give you an example. Growing up, so you've rightly said, you look at somebody and you say, oh, whose daughter are you? And would tell mom to say, no, but our friends, we are put on the side because they are children of Mr. So-and-so. And mom said, don't use my name. In fact, I don't have a name. Come and make a name for yourself and for your children. For now, me, I am not nowhere. But make sure you work and come and make a name for yourself. When I joined the Electoral Commission of Zambia, people asked, who is she? Whose child is she? Who is she connected to? How can she? According to people, you only get into certain spaces. If you are connected to someone, you are a child of somebody. They tried to look for a Luhanga somewhere who they can connect. The Luhangas are nowhere where you can begin to point at whether it's politics, whether it's corporate and whatever. It is just this child who's worked her way up. And she finds herself at the Electoral Commission of Zambia shortlisted to go and do this interview. And she's picked because she's put in the best she can. So yes, there are people who even feel so hopeless. I'll tell you there's no prescription. Like I can point to standard prescription and say, this is what you ought to do because circumstances and life hit us differently. but certain principles of life are definitely the same. The determination. So I eat in Shima with delele, with vegetables, and I'm not exaggerating this because these are the things that were happening. And I tell Mom, I am tired of this. She says, for now, you can eat this, but you know what you do? When you go in class, what do? Make sure you put in more effort. Because when you get educated, you land yourself a good job, you eat whatever you want to eat. And I remember her telling, because I used to love biscuits a lot and sweets, and she said, when you have your own money, you can eat as many as you can. For now, I can't afford. So I don't eat biscuits now. I don't eat chocolates. I don't eat sweets. I eat very little sugar. And these are things I was planning to be eating when I start working. I would just be moving with biscuits in my handbag. And to her words, truly, they came to pass. So what am I saying? You shouldn't look at your now. There's always something ahead of you. There's always something in future. Your now is not going to determine who you are to become in future. If you begin to apply your mind to anything. For me, I looked at such situations as just temporary. They'll come to pass. But we also need to ask ourselves, so Ilanji, do we have voices that are speaking into the lives of these people? Others don't have people to speak into their lives. I had a mother who spoke into my life, but are we seeing the same kind of parents today that have that spirit that can speak into the lives of their children to say, it will be well in future. Just keep going, just keep going. And that is why if you look at where I am today, I do mentorship programs. And the mentorship programs I do are targeted at the vulnerable. You'll never find me, it's very rare really, that you'll find me in, those kind of environments where the habits are sitting.
Yeah.
My job is that person that does not even have anyone to go to them and speak to them and be an example. And for me, that is an area of interest. And I've said, look, I can't do it alone. We need to have so many of these voices that should be speaking into these lives and keep on encouraging them that it is well, because I'm a living example of that. What we need to do now is make sure that we begin these mentorship programs. And I say mentorship should be part of the educational curriculum. Right from grade 1, what is it that we are speaking about? I know others are saying entrepreneurship and so on, but I'm also saying we need to be very deliberate about how we want to bring out up all these young ones right from a tender age. You've got a grade 1 child sitting in class today, so lunch. That's an orphan. Where they are coming from, they are literally, not even able to afford even to buy a little jersey for them to keep warm in class. So how do you expect a child to go and sit in class without a jersey? And they concentrate when it comes to learning. And this is why I'm saying we need to have so many examples. Frequenting them, we should be in their faces too much for them to see and say, oh, this one, I can also be like. I was amazed when I received a video. I'll show you that video. A little girl at a certain school decided to be Patricia Luhanga on Careers Day. So somebody took a video and sent it to me and said, oh, this little girl was introduced as Patricia Luhanga, the corporate affairs manager for Electoral Commission of Zambia. And I'm saying, what do they know about ECZ? So I took time to go and have a chat with a little girl. And I said, so what do you know about ECZ? And they told me, no, I was watching you announcing results. I said, which results? The elections. And so I want to be Patricia Luhanga when I grow up. I want to be announcing election results. So when you announce your election results, what happens? There's no, we are the ones that make the presidents of the country. And I'm thinking, So you see what our lives do. By virtue of someone watching you on TV, they can pick something. What more if you are physically there to speak to some of these issues and they begin to understand that perspective, that it is well. She was there with us. She can relate with me. And this is why I say, send me to the village. Today you find me cooking on firewood. I won't even care because I was there. So I can encourage someone and say, this was my life. But today, I can't even remember the last time I smelled smoke from firewood. It's a process. And the other thing that I want to say is I usually talk about process itself. And I give an example of something closer to us. For you to have your sugar in the house, where does it come from? So there should be a farmer somewhere there. Grow a sugar cane. That sugar cane is taken from the fields. It goes through a certain process until at the end of the day, you land with a sugar in a supermarket which you can buy and use. That's a process that we all go through as individuals. You can't jump the process and think you're okay. You've got your own trajectory. I can't be looking at you and say, oh, he had it easy, so I must also have it easy. Your circumstances and my circumstances are different. And the moment we begin to differentiate that, we begin to isolate those that are coming along the path that we walked, then we can reach out to them and say, this is what we are able to do for you.
Wow. Look, we're almost coming to an end. I've got two more questions. The first one is, you're here now, all these things that you've achieved, and through all of these things, you are a woman. What does it mean for other women? Because there are a lot of women, obviously, who work in misogynist organizations where the trend has always been it's men, it's men, it's men. If you look at the majority of boards in organizations, if you look at the majority of executive committees in organizations, most of these are male-dominated. Most of these are male-dominated. Where you work is obviously no exception.
Yeah.
Where you've worked in the past, how do you navigate these spaces as a woman? How do you continue to make your voice heard and strive to be treated as an equal?
So I was recently reading a report by the World Economic Forum, and in there they indicate that gender parity is now 175 years away. 175 years away for us to attain gender parity. So when you look at 175 years,
like
you
what,
and
4
I
lifetimes?
will not even be there. But if you look at 2018, we were 200 years away. We are closing the gap. And when we are closing this gap, we are saying there's a realization that women are equal to the task. However, I have a disclaimer. Give me a job, not because I'm a woman, but because you know I'm capable of handling the job. I don't just want to be a statistic. So how many women are in ECZ management? Oh, there are 2. And Patricia is, no. Look at my capability. Am I able to handle the role? And that is where we have a problem, because women are looked at like you were just pitied to be in such a position because you're a woman. You were just a statistic. Okay, 30%. So let's count 1, 2, 3, 4. No, women are equally capable. I was giving you an example of what I went through when I joined the Electoral Commission of Zambia. People saying, oh, she's a woman. Can she even run that office? We'll see what will happen when we go to the election. She'll be defeated, But I think my mental faculties have taught people that, in fact, I'm so strong than some of the men pushed in that space where I am. So why not give me the role that I deserve, right? So we need to keep talking about it. And if you look at Zambia today, I think we've done well. If we compare the past to where we are today, we've done well. So many women have been appointed to top positions, board positions. We have chief executive positions. We have management roles. And we keep celebrating and we keep enjoying the fact that there's recognition that is coming. But we also need to continuously work on ourselves and prove ourselves. So for you as a Manso Ilanji, you have to speak, with your voice literally on. If I have to speak as a woman, I must speak 10 times louder to be heard in the workplace. And I worked in a place where this man literally came to me and said, Patricia, who do you think you are? And I created chaos. I said, if you're not going to deal with this man, I'm going to take this far. You know what that did? they created a gender policy for the institution out of just that statement of saying, who do you think you are? I'm a human being. I'm a woman, and there's nothing I can do. I can't change and say, no, let me become a man. Respect me. The fact that I'm asking you a question, a professional question for that matter, and you are in a position that is higher than me, does not mean that I'm instructing you or I want to do my job and this sits in your space. So can you give me the information that I require for me to work? So it's a vicious circle, I say. You find certain institutions where men want to show they are men. You also find institutions where men say, okay, these are our little sisters, these are our sisters, these are our mothers. What is it that we can do to help them become better people? I'm in Electoral Commission of Zambia. My CEO is big on gender. He's not a person who will look at you and he won't say, because you're a woman, so Patricia, you can. If that is the way they looked at women, I would not be sitting where I'm sitting today. And he's always asking us, so how do we begin to engender the commission so that, we increase the number of women? And what is it that you can do for yourselves? For you to have the recognition, for us to see that it's not just, the statistics around. So yes, we've got a lot of work to do. It's like we have a point to prove, but also the realization that you shouldn't just appoint a woman because they're a woman to increase your statistics, but because you believe they're capable of handling the role that you're throwing them into.
All right, thank you. My last question, what would be your top 5 pieces of advice to women in the professional world?
Self-development, very important. And when I talk about self-development, it comes in all areas. You need to continuously learn. You need to continuously develop. You need to be well-read. You need to know what's happening in the world around you so that no one can tell you you know nothing. Secondly, for women, and I'm talking about now when there's a buzz around how people are achieving their goals, please don't think of jumping the process. Process is very important. You have to ensure that you go through the necessary processes for you to come out refined. Number 3, don't be shy to ask for help. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. You are simply humble enough to say, I don't know. I need help. Please hold my hand so that I do the right thing. Number 4, network. Networking is very important. And be very strategic. You are not going to be all over. You know the areas of interest for yourself. And because these are areas of interest, look at the right people you can meet. If you're in the banking sector, your interest is in the banking sector, look for people around that sector that will help you. Right. The last one, present yourself how you want people to address you. And in this, I mean your visibility in terms of your brand, how you carry yourself, how you dress. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about somebody going to buy expensive clothes because they want to. No. Within your means, dress well and make sure you look presentable and people will have respect for you, even just on face value. They look at you the first time, they meet you the first time, they know there's something they can look at.
Thank you so much for this insightful conversation.
Thank you.
And you are on LinkedIn, right?
Yes, I am.
But not on Facebook.
If
people want to follow you.
I think LinkedIn is the best.
LinkedIn.
People can follow me on LinkedIn because that is where I think I do most of my posts. Facebook has become a bit toxic, so I try to run away from it. But LinkedIn, definitely, Patricia Luhanga, I'm there.
Okay, so where do you go from here, moving forward? Like, where do you see yourself?
There's quite a lot happening. I'm doing some personal projects, and in those personal projects, there's also a component of education. I am yet to figure out how I should approach my PhD, but there's something that I'm definitely doing. So from PhD, then we can decide whether we go the academia route,
okay,
or we go the consultancy
so Dr.
route.
Luhanga, then Professor Luhanga. And
I look forward to Professor.
You look forward to Professor. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Otherwise, thank you so much for the conversation. I think I now see you in a whole different light. I never used to see you, I just used to see, Patricia in the orange bib, that the reflector and whatnot.
Announcing
results and the next update is in 6 hours. That kind of thing. But yeah, it's good, I think, to also just open up the person so others can relate with you, because like I said, I think the first time that we met, it's about you've gone through that. It's no longer your life, but there are others that can pick up from where they are and go further because of you sharing your story. And I feel it's very kind of you to take the time out and have this conversation with us. So thank you so much for the time.
Thank you once again for having me.
All right, thank you so much, guys. Thank you very much for watching today's edition of the podcast. We're talking to Patricia Luhanga, the Corporate Affairs Manager at the Electoral Commission of Zambia. We're back next week with another exciting episode. Remember, like, subscribe, and share the video. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day.